Now we looked at object order, a couple of the ratios of how the objects relate to each other. And again, we can look at this as another step in the direction of objects in the definition of what I think is juggling in my map of objects, body, and rhythm. Because now what we were concerned with is how the objects are moving in relationship to each other, the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of focus we're giving onto each individual object. So the motivation of what we're doing is driven from the focus from the side of the objects. But like I mentioned before when I was talking about this idea of what is good manipulation and what is bad manipulation, coming back to this idea of technique, if a juggler is left-handed or right-handed, and when you're first starting out without having a lot of technique, you're going to prefer one hand over the other, and maybe a lot of the work or the action that you're doing or the harder techniques will be focused on one hand rather than on both hands equally. Or what is the relationship between the two hands? And that way now we can start to think that we're talking more about the body category inside of this idea of the three categories inside of juggling. So now we're going to look at, instead of the object order, we're going to look at hand order. And again, we're only using the word hand to move the conversation along. So we don't have to keep saying or knee, or head, or neck, or foot, or leg, or whatever, or floor, or other person, or anything like that. So for now we're just going to say hand order. And we're going to look at the ratio of that. And in the exact same way that we were counting the objects in these videos, we took these same videos where we counted the objects, the order of the objects. And we took those same videos and we sat down and watched them, and as best as we could, we watched the hands, or the things that were doing the juggling. And as best as we could determine, we would write down left, right, left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, right, right. We try to understand, so for example, on Chris Cremo's 3-ball routine, how much does he use his left hand versus how much does he use his right hand? And we started to have these strings of letters again. And again, it was a real shock to start to see that the list would start to contain certain patterns of the left and the right hand. And those were the patterns that were inside of the videos that we thought were good juggling, as well as our own videos that we thought was good juggling. And then of course we did the same thing with all the videos of all the bad juggling, and we tried to write down as best as we could, follow the hands, as best as we could understand what it meant to follow the hand order, and we say left or right side of the body, or left or right foot maybe, or left or right part of the head, I don't know. And we started to just try to attempt to do this, to make a start somewhere, to start to understand this. And we had this list again of L's and R's that was quite long, and this was all the bad juggling. And again, inside of that, we started to find these patterns. So it was a shock, not as big of a shock as it was because we'd already done object order, and we'd already found some sort of consistent idea there. But it still was a pretty big surprise that we did find these ideas again inside of the hand order as well as the object order. And it was the same thing again. There were patterns inside of the good juggling videos that were consistent in terms of hand order, and the same thing, there were consistent patterns in terms of the bad juggling videos in terms of hand order. And so, again, out of the good ratios of hand order, we found 3 to be particularly useful. And once again, same as in the object order, looking backwards on it, they were a little bit, I don't know, obvious, but they do make sense. So here's the good ones. And we're going to start with left, right. The next one was left, left, right. And the last one is left, 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 right. And again, we had 3 bad ones. Just for consistency, we picked 3 of the bad hand patterns, hand ratio patterns. So here, let's just talk about, again, today we'll just talk about one. Let's say the worst one. So we're going to do left, left, right, right. And let's talk about these for a second, to try to understand it. When I mean left and then right, what I'm saying is, when I start my juggling, no matter how many objects I'm using or what order I'm juggling them in, it means that the first thing I'm going to do is with my left hand. So, I don't know. And the second thing I'm going to do is with my right hand. And just to be really clear, I know this is so stupid, but just to say, I can't go like this. Because I'm using then my left hand 2 times in a row. That would fit more down to this ratio here. But if we're just using left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, these are the same as in sight swaps as well, just to say that you can write left, right instead of writing left, right, left, right, left, right. In the same way, to document a 3-ball cascade in sight swap, you just say the number 3. You don't say 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. You don't have to. And also, just to clarify before I forget, these patterns of, let's say, left, right, sometimes in my list, when I was watching these videos, it would say left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. But a lot of times it would say left, right, and then this one, left, left, right, and then another left, right, and then this ratio. So these ratios would get mixed up. But they were really clearly identifiable patterns. And it wasn't, again, like we did this with one video. We did this with like 100 videos. So we did have a lot of references to start to try to find these patterns. And they weren't perfect. Sometimes you wouldn't have lefts or rights that would fit inside of this. But consistently we would find large sections of the data would contain these patterns. So I'm convinced that it is there somehow. But if we're looking at this again, just to say, the left and the right could also be switched around. I'm saying left and right because I'm left-handed, just because it's fun for me to say left, right. It's the same thing to say right, left. You understand? Because we're only talking about a ratio. We're not talking about an actual order, a consistent, specific order. We could say that. We could say, eventually, at some point, if we did enough research, that you have to juggle left, left, right. And if you juggle right, right, left, it's not as good. But we're not at that point yet. I don't know. I don't have a reason to say that. For now, I'm only talking about the relationship of the amount of work of each hand in the pattern. So let's look at this again in terms of what this might mean. It's the same thing as in the object order 1, 2, 3. I thought that sounded really basic. It sounded boring. It sounded obvious. The same thing now. Left, right being a good hand order ratio. It sounds, again, from the beginning that maybe left and right is so boring because that's what we do with the cascade. Left, right, left, right, left, right. But exactly like in the object order, left, right is equally balanced. We use both hands equally. We don't forget one over the other. So let's say I'm doing my juggling routine, and like I said, I'm left-handed. So I do left hand, or whatever. Oh, I'm going to do another trick. Oh, there's my left hand. There's my left hand. And the right hand isn't really being used equally, right? Because I'm left-handed, so all my technique is coming from one side. At least here, in this ratio, they're being used equally in terms of the concept of the technique. At least there's an attempt to be using them equally. It's even, I could even say more that it would be like this. I could go in this way and not even use my right hand at all, or you could say I'm doing 2s, 4, 2, 4, 2. But here the technique is clearly higher in my left hand. There's something about technique and distribution of technique, and the way that you're counting these techniques as 1 move or as 2 moves. Again, it's interpretive how we're talking about using these hands, but there is some sort of a ratio we want to achieve where there's a balance. So it's equal. It might be boring, but it's very short, right? So it's left and then right, but you're going to use the left one again, so it moves along pretty quickly. The next ratio, it sets up a pattern and breaks it. It's left, left, right, left, left, right. So there's a little surprise there. And the last one is even more surprising. Left, 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 right. It just comes out of nowhere. That's all of a sudden you're going to put another element in. You're setting up a pattern, an expectation, and then you're breaking it by adding in the other side. And as well, for the bad ratio, it's the same thing we had on the bad ratio of the object order. It's really, really, really long. And it's really repetitive. So it's left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. There's no surprise. And it's a long time that you have to wait before the thing loops again. It's 4 beats long, whereas here it's only 2 beats long. It's half as long. It moves more quickly. More variety. Here you set up a recognizable pattern, but then once you've established the pattern, it doesn't really go anywhere. There's no surprise. Like here, you always get some sort of syncopation in terms of the rhythm. That suddenly you get a new element introduced at some point inside the rhythm. So let's start off and look at only the hand order. So for now, we're still going to use 3 balls, But we don't care anymore about the object order, okay? So they're not numbered 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't matter. If you have the 3 balls and you only want to use, let's say, the white one, that is totally fine. The only thing we care about is the order of the hands. So the first hand order we're going to look at, let's see. We're going to do with 3 balls, and we want to use the hands in this order. Let's go left, left, right through 3 times. So it's going to be 9 moves long. And again, it doesn't matter at all how the objects move. We're only concerned with which hand you use. So first you have to use your left hand, then you have to use your left hand again, and then you have to use your right hand. And you can't use your right hand before you use your left hand twice. Right? And it's going to just be 9 moves long. And let's do that in 10 minutes. Great. Great. Now we had 10 minutes to do left, left, right through 3 times. So we had 9 throws, 9 moves. And we were only worried about which order the hands moved in. And it's the same problem we had now as we had before with the object order. So for example, in the object order, we had to interpret our own technique to understand what it meant that we're doing one move, or we're doing the next move, or the first throw, or the second throw, or what's a trick, what's a throw, what's a catch, how do you count those? And of course, as jugglers, we always have this natural tendency to make things not more complicated, but we do have, you could say one way, a curious mind, which is a good thing. But of course, we always tend to make things really complex from the start. And a lot of times you're tempted, when you hear a new concept like this about object order, you have this temptation to see what that would mean in all sorts of different types of techniques. So for example, as soon as you hear a new idea, you might immediately think, oh, but what about multiplex, for example? But when we're talking about object order, multiplex is totally fine to count like this. Let's say I want to do the object order 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So in that way I could do 1, 2, 3 like this. Right? I'm throwing 1 and 2 at the same time. It's okay. They're still in the right order. They just go together. I'm not skipping one of them. I'm using them. We're talking about the timing of this. So for now I can interpret and say that this is actually 2 movements with the object order. Right? So when I throw this multiplex 1, 2, I have 2 things happening, 2 separate things happening, because I'm looking at the object order. And I moved those 2 before I moved number 3, because that was my rule that I wanted to try. But now we're looking at hand order. So for example, that same piece of technique, this multiplex, therefore if I want to do left, left, right, it doesn't work for me, at least in my world, to go like this anymore. Because now I'm only doing 1 move with the left hand. It's moving 2 objects, but I don't care about the objects anymore in this instance. I'm only thinking about my hand. So for me to do this, it means I'm only going left, right. I'm not doing left, left, right. It's something to think about, and when we see what each other did, let's see how we all try to interpret this kind of idea about how the technique and what it means to us. Can we see? Again, I have to say, when I look at the exercise we just did, it might seem to me on the surface that the result could look really strange or weird or unnatural. Because at least in my life, starting out, you could say at the very least many years ago, I never thought about things like my hand order ratio. I never sat down and consciously said, I'm going to use my left hand twice before I use my right hand. But in what I saw you just juggling right now, it looked like juggling. It looked like nice juggling. A lot of it looked like, yeah, juggling that I liked. So again, maybe there is some sort of truth to this idea that there is a hand-order ratio in such a way that juggling as we know it today, as juggling has evolved from the past, there is something inside of it about this. But we've looked at the object order and we've looked at the hand order, but we haven't really tested any of the simple ones. Remember the first ratio of object order was 1, 2, 3, which was the cascade, which seemed really maybe boring. And as well, we had the hand order ratio of left, right, left, right, left, right. That also is the cascade, you know, the basic pattern, which also seems boring to me, perhaps. So let's test that one out now. Let's make some juggling, where we do the hand order ratio of left, right, and let's do that through, we're going to do 8 throws, or 8 moves. So we'll do 4 times through left, right, and remember, when I say left, right, I'm only talking about the ratio of the hands. It's not specifically left, right. So if you want, you can do right, left. Though, of course, in this exercise, it doesn't really matter. But as you wish to switch around your hands, it's totally fine. And let's take 10 minutes to do 8 moves, using this idea of left, right, and see, is it going to be good juggling, or is it going to be boring and predictable? Let's find out. Now we have the hand order of left, right through 4 times, so 8 moves, and we're going to see if, again, this ratio of left, right should be one of the good hand orders. It should make juggling that we think is good instead of bad. So let's test that and see if it's boring or not. Left and right, left, right. We looked at the hand order of left, right, and again, I don't know if you thought it was good or not, but it looked like some juggling to me. It looked like normal juggling, for better or worse. I think for better. I think it's pretty cool that you can understand that the hand order of left, right, left, right, left, right, it doesn't have to just produce the cascade. It can make juggling that looks like juggling, like composed juggling, that you would see on any of the YouTube videos today. If you go to a festival, you see it in the gym. People are doing left, right, without knowing it. People are doing these hand patterns without being conscious of it. But it is somewhere inside the juggling, these consistent patterns that make juggling that looks like what we think juggling looks like in our lives. So the last thing let's do, let's try to combine an object order with the hand order at the same time. And in that way, we're going to use the seemingly perhaps boring or obvious object order, but it should be still good, it should be a good one, of the 1, 2, 3. And we're going to combine it with the final hand order that we haven't tested yet, which is left, 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 right. And you'll notice, of course, that the hand order is 4 units long. It has 4 moves, four kinds of hands to choose. And the object order is only 3 long. It means that it's going to take 12 moves before it finishes to cycle through the whole pattern. And this is the 3 against 4 rhythm that I juggled before, in terms of this idea about rhythm happening at the same time and phasing and shifting in and out. So here's a few suggestions about how to do this. The first thing to realize is it might seem really complicated. It might be really intimidating when you say, wait a second, it was hard enough for me to keep track of the objects, and it was also challenging enough for me to understand which hand to use next and how to remember that. And now you want me to do both of them at the same time. How can I do that? It's not possible. Because again, a lot of this work that we're talking about now is work that we do inside of our juggling, but we're not conscious of it. We don't sit down and think about these things on purpose and practice these things in our minds as well as practicing the technique. So what I suggest is I'm going to leave this here on the board, and you can just read it like a map, like a score. And the only thing you have to do then, the only thing you have to keep in your brain is 12 different moves. Because this is always going to be here to remind you what's coming next. And also, I like this kind of system in the way that it tells me exactly what's going to happen next, and yet I still have some possibilities. So for example, what am I going to do first? Well, let's see, I have my 3 objects, and okay, let's say it's 1, the blue ball's 2, that one's 1, that's number 3. Okay, but where do I start? I'm going to make some juggling now. Where do I start? Well, already we have a lot of information. I'm going to start with my left hand, and I'm going to move or do something with object number 1. But then in terms of what that move is, it can be anything in the world. It doesn't matter. For now, I can start and make that object move however I want. It can be that, it can be that, it doesn't matter. And now, cool, I made a choice. It doesn't matter what it is. What's next? Well, I use my left hand to move object number 2. Oh, cool, I can do like that, etc. So I only have to remember each move that I make, and I'm just reading this just like a road map, just like I'm driving somewhere, it's telling me where to go. It's making the choices for me. I just have to remember what choices I made. And that way I can suggest that when you work on this, you do exactly like I started. You say, okay, my left hand is going to move object number 1. It means, let's see, object number 1 is there. Okay, I made a choice. And so you first have to remember where you started. So don't get lost and say, oh yeah, I actually have to remember where I started from. So I start with 2 balls in my left hand. I start with 1 ball in my right hand, and I'm going to count them. The pink is 1. Let's say the white is 2. And the blue ball is number 3. It doesn't matter, but you have to remember that as a starting point. So you're going to start, you're going to remember where your objects are and how you count the objects, what number you give them. And then you just read the map and you say, okay, left hand moves ball number 1, cool. And now I'm going to make a new choice, so what's that? Oh, left hand's going to move ball number 2, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I suggest in your process, if you want to, what helps me is I go back to the beginning and I say, okay, so what was 1? Oh yeah, 1 was that, and then 2 was that. Okay, now I remember both of them. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Well, left hand is going to move ball number 3, so I'm going to do something like that. Okay, so I go back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3, for example. In this way, it might seem that your forward progress is slower, because of course, by the time you get down here, you're going to have to go back and repeat all those moves from the beginning. But, at least for me, in the long run, it's a shorter process because I'm going to remember all these things. So that by the time I get to the last one, I'm going to know my whole sequence. Instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to start here, I'm going to go like this, then I'm going to go like this, then I'm going to go like this, I'm going to go like this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then, okay, I'm going to go from the beginning again, and I don't remember at all what I did. Right? So maybe it's a slower process if you take the time as you go to remember it, but in the end it'll be faster because you're going to actually remember the sequence consistently every time. So let's try to do the last object order that we haven't tried to do yet, and the last hand order that we haven't tried to do yet. We're going to combine them together in 12 moves, and for that, let's do 15 minutes. Let's try that, 15 minutes. Because you're just going to read the map, going to read it, see what it says. Maybe you need a little bit more time to think about what's happening. Let's try it in 15 minutes and see what happens. If you're interested in this type of work, there were 3 different laboratories. Manipulation Research Laboratory number 1, which is about the rules of manipulation. There was Manipulation Research Laboratory number 2, which is about composition of juggling. And number 3 was about tricks and props, about how to make tricks and how props affect technique. There were DVDs produced about all 3 of these sessions. There were also articles published in different juggling magazines and online and different resources. So if you're interested in these things, they are out there if you want to know more about the results. We only talked about the object order and the hand order for now. There were many other things we tested. For example, what is the best prop for juggling, which has the most possibilities, a ball, a club, or a ring, and why. And a lot of other ideas about what makes juggling good or what makes juggling bad, what do we like about juggling, and how can we know these things, and also how can we apply them to our practice in everyday life. But for now, let's see how it looks like with the hand and object order together. We're not doing all the combinations, just doing one, but if you are interested in this, we do have the 3 good examples of the 3 object orders, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, as well the hand orders, left, right, left, left, right, left, 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 right. And you can do all the combinations of those of hand order and object order. But as well, realize we're only doing 2 layers of information. So for example, we're only talking about objects and then the hand order. You could start to organize other layers of information inside of the juggling. Already we talked about how to move our body and according to the technique or the rhythm of a throw, or all these other different ways that we can organize juggling according to patterns of numbers. We've used that before as well. So in this way we can start to fill out different layers on top of the information that we're working with. Now we have hand order, we have object order. What else can you put on top to make a script for juggling? Which also brings up this idea that for now we were having 15 minutes to compose a sequence using this idea of hand and object order. But for example, in the same way we used the number pyramid, where we counted out from 1 all the way up to 6 and then back down to 1, we were doing that in real time and interpreting the data inside our minds in real time, making the actions in real time with the balls and with the juggling. We could learn to do that too as well with this kind of script. We could write down and say the hand order and the object order, and we could also learn to interpret that in real time as well if we wanted to. It's just all up to what we practice and what our focus is. But for now, let's see what you made in 15 minutes with the hand order and the object order.
Good.